It was a dark day on CNN yesterday as they had to face the reality that the American people just wouldn't buy everything that they've been selling for the last 4 years about January 6th, 2021. It was a remarkable thing. It was like 24-hour programming. All they wanted to do was keep replaying 4 years ago, lament what happened, and even more so, lament that the American people didn't really care, not nearly as much as Jake Tapper and the whole team there at CNN. Take a look at a little bit of this coverage.
Brad, is it time for Donald Trump to apologize for what took place 4 years ago?
I wouldn't expect Donald Trump would apologize. I think nor do I expect Democrats to apologize for trying to undo his presidency by all legal and extra legal means after that.
Come on, Brad. Come on.
No, Jim, look at our own polling. Look at CNN's own exit polling. Voters who said they voted on democracy were evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. January 6th was a dark day in the history of our country. Donald Trump bears a lot of responsibility for that. It's something that should stain his legacy forever. However, voters, they punished him for it. That's why he was behind Ron DeSantis by 20 points until Alvin Bragg indicted him. And once voters decided that Democrats were determined to prevent Donald Trump from being elected by any extra legal means, they decided maybe this wasn't as clear.
I mean, shouldn't your party have just rejected him, just flat out rejected him, from Kevin McCarthy to Mitch McConnell to the whole lot of them? How could your party let him be the nominee again?
Watch what Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell said in the aftermath of that. They absolutely did condemn him. Mitch McConnell was still condemning him months afterward on the floor. Yeah. Nancy Pelosi decided to use January 6th for partisan gain, though. She appointed, she refused to let Kevin McCarthy appoint Republicans to the committee. She didn't let Republicans hire staff to the January 6th Oversight Committee. They didn't allow cross-examination.
The January 6th committee had the Republican of all Republicans, Liz Cheney, on
Liz Cheney she was not
booted out of your party. I mean,
she wasn't appointed by her conference like
Dick
every
Cheney's
other
daughter.
committee. She wasn't appointed by the Republican conference.
Good Republican.
All right. I love that part. By the way, a couple of things to unpack there. His name is Brad Todd, by the way, and he did a very good job. I'm always torn. It's like, why do Republicans go on these shows, especially with Jim Acosta? But then I'm happy that a Republican like Brad Todd gets on there. Don't you love Jim Acosta's messaging there? He said, this is typical perspective of a Democrat. How did your party allow Donald Trump to become the nominee? And of course, the appropriate answer is, well, the people are our party. The voters wanted him. Unlike Democrats, we don't have three powerful, rich individuals get into a room and decide who the next nominee is going to be. There was a full field of candidates, including Ron DeSantis, including Vivek Ramaswamy, including Nikki Haley, and they voted for Donald Trump. That's how the party let him be the nominee. But that tells you everything about how liberals and Democrats take a look at these things. And then finally, well, she's the Republican of all Republicans. She's Liz Cheney. She's Dick Cheney's daughter. No, the bottom line is the leader of the Republicans in the House, Kevin McCarthy, didn't want her on that panel. It was Nancy Pelosi who selected her. And if we're going to play that game, Jim Acosta, then what about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? He's the Democrat of Democrats. He's Bobby Kennedy's son, right? Would you describe him as the Democrat of all Democrats, the perfect quintessential Democrat, Jim? Of course you wouldn't, because you're an absolute hack. But the lamenting continued, all about January 6th, and the lies continued. Take a listen to this. We spent a lot of time telling you how horrible Jake Tapper is, but this may be one of the worst.
Looking at images from the floor of the House of Representatives, members of the House and Senate are gathering in what is there, and there is the Speaker Mike Johnson and Vice President Kamala Harris. It's obviously a bipartisan or even nonpartisan event where the leaders of this country come together to count the electoral votes. There's Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, who was one of the main individuals who helped cause what happened 4 years ago by putting forward the falsehood that the vice president could somehow do something to stop the electoral count.
Wow. Ted Cruz, who helped cause what happened 4 years ago. Ted Cruz, one of 100 senators, did what was completely constitutionally empowered for him to do, which was to challenge the way the electoral votes were determined in the state of Pennsylvania, because an unelected Secretary of State and a Supreme Court determined which ballots would be valid and which would not be valid, circumventing the actual law passed by the state legislature in Pennsylvania. And to be clear, the Constitution says that the members of the Electoral College voting body and the electoral votes for any given state shall be determined by the legislature. He was going to make that argument that day. And for Jake Tapper to stand there and say he's one of the people responsible for what happened on January 6th, because you're not allowed to have an opinion that differs from Jake Tapper. He's a disgusting hack. And I see, this is the kind of thing where I hope, he's facing a defamation suit right now. It starts today, this defamation suit. Jake Tapper himself and CNN for lying about a person, allegedly defaming a person who was in Afghanistan rescuing people there because Joe Biden had abandoned them. And he's suing them for $1 billion. And there have been various moments where a settlement has been proposed. And this guy, the plaintiff in the case, said, no, I don't want a settlement. I want a judgment. I want a judgment against you people for lying about me. And this is going to be a beautiful thing to watch. CNN is in big trouble in this defamation suit. Jake Tapper was the reporter, the host of the show that actually allowed that to happen. Okay, a little bit more here as the heartache at CNN continued. Look at this, like all day long, all they did was continue showing clips from 4 years ago. I mean, it's like it was the high point for them. It's like they're celebrating this anniversary of the protest that got dicey and violent on January 6th. They keep repeating the lie. The police officers were murdered that day. Police officers died that day. And David Urban, who is sort of the counterpart, but he's sort of the pacing partner with Scott Jennings over there. David Urban points out the sad reality of who actually did die on January 6th, 4 years ago.
What? Let's just say David, all those people weren't violent protesters.
I'm going to let you make your point, but I want to pull that video back up that we were just showing, because I want you to make your point, because I think a lot of people share your perspective.
Yeah, those people should go to jail, right?
What we were just showing with the barricades and the officers. Those were not officers just letting them.
No, go to the Supreme Court side.
Yeah, I know the video you're talking about.
No, this is these people should go to jail. The people on the Supreme Court side, however,
they were trespassing.
They were
talking about.
There's a difference between trespassing and physical violence.
I know, but don't you think they should? Shouldn't they make an example out of these people though? Like this was wrong. They shouldn't be allowed to trespass.
Everybody should not be treated equally. They were violent criminals, right? They shouldn't be treated equally. There are people. These people who are beating the police should go to jail. There's no excuse for it, right? There's no excuse for it. Some of the people on the
do you think then those people should get pardons? Should those people
that beat the police? No, shouldn't
the people that Donald Trump is promising to pardon?
He didn't promise to pardon everybody. He said he's going to promise. He's going to look at it case by case basis. Let's just be factual. Those are the words, right? And to be factual, the only person that died on January 6th, there was one person that died. Ashley Babbitt was the only person who was died.
And she was there because Donald Trump
lost
his life.
No, wait a minute. You're arguing because he didn't die on the 6th and he passed away on the 7th.
We're talking about who died on January 6th.
That is beyond splitting hairs.
It's not splitting hairs.
Come on.
You don't actually
why else was she there? She wouldn't have been there that day if Donald Trump didn't spread conspiracy theories about an election that he knew was not stolen. And he told those people to go to the Capitol. And so she was there as a result of him telling her to be there. She would not have died if it were for Donald Trump to accept the results of the election.
She would have died if the police officer didn't wrongfully shoot her. I wish January 6th, I wish the January 6th committee would have done a full investigation for the American people to see and hear. Watch this. And again, don't listen to David Urban, American people. Hold on. Don't listen to American people. Go to the video. It's all New York Times put this out. It's all over YouTube. Watch what happened to Ashley Babbitt.
Looking at this.
There you go. Ashley Babbitt. She's the only person who died on January 6th. And that whole, Officer Sicknick, he died a day later or 2 days later. That had nothing to do with January 6th. Go ahead and search it. Fact check me, whatever social media platform I'm on right now that you're watching me on, because they always put little fact checks underneath. Fact check it. Every police officer who died after January 6th, one person died of a stroke that was completely unrelated. His own doctors said it was unrelated to January 6th. And a couple of officers died from suicide. We don't know. There's no evidence that says it had anything to do with January 6th. Okay. Sorry. Police officers were not killed on January 6th or as a result of January 6th. The one person who died as a result of January 6th is Ashley Babbitt. And I love really great to hear liberals on this panel saying, well, she got shot in the throat because she was there that day. If she hadn't been there, it would have never happened. Okay, could we go back and look at some of the incidents with law enforcement that caused the Black Lives Matter riots? I mean, I could make the same argument about George Floyd. George Floyd would still be alive today if he hadn't broken the law. Is that really where we are, liberals at CNN? Okay, I just want to know what the rules are. Thanks. So what's going on at CNN? Why did they spend all day focusing on January 6th 4 years ago? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they're very upset. They're very upset that they have zero influence. They have beaten the drum since January, 6th, 2021. They thought that this was going to be the end of Donald Trump, the end of MAGA, the end of the Republican Party, frankly, unless you're a Republican that is approved of by Nancy Pelosi and Jake Tapper, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. They thought that January 6th was going to change everything and become a political shift in America that would last for decades. They were sure of it, and it's all they wanted to talk about. And the fact of the matter is, when the American people finally had something to say about it, they told CNN to go get stuffed. They said, we know exactly what happened on January 6th. We saw it with our own eyes. We don't need you to tell us what happened. And hyperbolically say that it was worse than September 11th and worse than Pearl Harbor and worse than the Civil War. We know what it was. It wasn't good, but it wasn't all of those things. And the American people have reached their conclusion about January 6th. And to determine exactly what the American people think about January 6th and how it's at odds with all of the experts and much more intellectual, sanctimonious, smarter people than you at CNN, let's turn to CNN. Because on this very same day yesterday, they actually explored the changing public sentiment over January 6th, as the American people actually saw the facts, not the propaganda from CNN, not the propaganda from the January 6th committee, no, the actual facts. We have reached our conclusions.
Hello to you.
Hello, shalom.
So President Biden has an op-ed out this morning, basically saying that he hopes people don't memory hole what happened on January 6th 4 years ago, but is that an uphill battle? You know who's here? You saw him. Senior data reporter Harry Enton.
Hello.
Nice to see you,
nice
sir.
to see you.
Congratulations on the Bills.
Doing something.
Doing the one thing they shouldn't do, which was lose yesterday. Anyway, views on Donald Trump and his responsibility for January 6th have changed, including how people feel he should be perceived politically. Yes?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think if you go back, 4 years ago, right, Trump's role on January 6, 2021 should make him ineligible to be president. The clear majority of voters said yes, 56%, and that was including removal from office. But of course, Donald Trump won the presidency, and part of the reason why was because views on Trump completely shifted, including Trump's role on January 6, 2021, should make him ineligible for the presidency. By 2023, 2024, it was just 47%. So we saw this drop of about 9 points. And that, of course, is all the difference in the world, going from a majority to short of a majority. And of course, Donald Trump won the vast majority of the other 53% who did not believe that his role on January 6th would make him ineligible for the presidency.
Still a big number, but not enough.
Correct.
Right.
This 9-point shift was tremendous.
All right, let's talk about the why behind it, Harry.
Yeah, why? All right, so part of the reason why is, was Trump greatly responsible for the attack on the Capitol? You go back to January 2021, it was 48%. By the time of December of 2023, look at that. Again, a clear shift down to 37%. This is an 11-point drop, very much mirroring that drop that we saw that the folks said that, of course, would make him ineligible for the presidency. So that is part of the reason why, right?
All right. And there's more to this, but you see what's happened here, right? And it's like, well, why? Why would the American people think that immediately after the events and then change their mind? Okay, for two reasons. First of all of the propaganda and everything we heard about January 6th, we didn't have an alternate story. Nobody was coming out and saying, well, there's more to this story than meets the eye. Here's what really happened. Here's this, here's that, here's that. So the immediate reaction, of course, was, oh, yeah, Trump. But secondarily, and more importantly, the American people hate being lied to. It's funny. I've had an ongoing disagreement with my buddy Andrew Klavan about this. I keep saying it. We, the American people, we can tell when we're being lied to, and we hate being lied to. Now, Andrew Klavan is much, much, much older than I am, as you know, and he's much more cynical than I am. And he says that the American people love to be lied to. We'll agree to disagree on that, and we'll still enjoy a nice adult beverage over it as we do. Let me tell you something. For the last 3 years, 4 years, the American people have been lied to about January 6th. And when we learn the truth and we see things, and when we're told, that it's worse than 9/11 and it's worse than this and it's worse than that, and then people start thinking logically about it. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If it was an insurrection, if it was an attempt to overthrow the government, then why didn't anybody bring a gun? And when you start asking yourself that question, you start to realize, oh yeah, okay. It was something else. It wasn't an insurrection. It wasn't an attempt to overthrow the government. It may have been something bad, but it wasn't what Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi and Jake Tapper's been telling me that it was. And when you start recognizing that, and you find out that they go overboard to lie to you, to try to sell you something that obviously on the face of it isn't true, then maybe, just maybe, this is a lot worse. The lies are a lot worse than the reality of what happened on January 6th. And that's why immediately people start saying, yeah, screw it. Of course, Trump is fine. Trump didn't have anything to do with it. And that's why these numbers shifted. By the way, those numbers, December of 2023, shifted even more by the time we got to Election Day, I'm sure, because the American people hate being lied to. And we were lied to horribly by these people.
Fewer folks thought he was greatly responsible for what happened on January 6th.
Oh.
But it's not just that. It's that people simply didn't care as much about the attack on the Capitol. Look at this. January 6th is your biggest memory of Trump's first term in office. By the time of 2024, look at this. It was just 5% of Americans. And among Republicans, it was just 2%. So the bottom line is fewer Americans faulted Donald Trump or thought he was greatly responsible for the January 6th attack. And more than that, as it went into the rearview mirror, far fewer folks thought that it was their number one memory.
Yeah, that's right. That is the bottom line. And what that graph tells you right there, look at that. 5% overall in America would agree that January 6th is the biggest memory of Trump's term. And what that really means is, that CNN lost. CNN lost. Nobody cares what CNN says. Nobody believed what CNN says. We still don't. And yet they still devoted their entire day yesterday to lament it, to scream at you, to wring their hands about you, to cry about you, to shout into their cameras at you. Why don't you believe us? Why don't you agree with us? Why don't you care about January 6th the same way we do? And boy, it was great television. It really was. Too bad nobody was watching. So we're talking about increased tariffs right now on our trade partners, tax cuts, regulation changes. I want you to learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic right now more than ever. Birch Gold, the only company I endorse, only gold company I endorse. Let me just be clear on that. They're releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era, and they've got a foreword written by the aforementioned Donald Trump Jr. To get your free copy, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold, just text my name, Larry, to 989898. The facts are the national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar, and Birch Gold is still the company I recommend to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. And that's not a penny out of your pocket to get that done. Text Larry to 989898. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. No obligation, only information. I love Birch Gold because they've got an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau. Thousands of happy customers. You can trust Birch Gold too. Text my name, Larry, 989898. Do it today.